the ranking member, Mr. Neguse, for his questions.
Thank you, Director Stone Manning and Director Sams, for your testimony and for indulging the committee here, and know that it's been a robust hearing thus far, and suspect that will continue. I really wanted to ask Dr. Sams you a series of questions. Before I do so, I'll just take one moment to again thank Director Stone Manning, your agency, for the steps that you took to protect the Thompson Divide. And of course, as you know, we are very much engaged in an effort here in the Congress to make those protections permanent through the CORE Act, which myself and Senator Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper have introduced, and it has variations, iterative versions of it have passed the House multiple times in the last several years. Our hope springs eternal that we'll be able to get that across the finish line. But in the interim, the protections afforded to the Thompson Divide by virtue of your agency's decision are incredibly important to the folks in Colorado, and just want to express my gratitude to the agency for taking that steps. To the extent you would like to expound on that, I'm happy to give you an opportunity. But
thank you, Congressman. I just wanted to say that the thanks there goes to the leadership of Secretary Holland.
Director Sams, I want to also say thank you for the work that you do and the National Park Service does every day. Of course, as you know, Rocky Mountain National Park is in my district considered a crown jewel of the NPS system, and grateful for the partnership that we have with folks there. I want to talk a bit about wildland firefighting, and as you know, we've raised this issue at prior hearings with respect to the challenges that our wildland firefighters are facing in terms of government housing rates. And we sent a letter, myself, a number of my colleagues, on a bipartisan basis, to both you and Chief Moore earlier this year. I received your response, or a response that was sent on behalf of your agency last month. What I am hoping you can kind of help me understand, I recognize that the NPS has certain constraints that you all are operating under, particularly as it relates to OMB's circular guidance. But clearly, that guidance, as it is being implemented and interpreted today, is having disastrous impacts for federal wildland firefighters who are facing exorbitant rent increases. And I am wondering what conversations you've had with your colleagues at OMB about necessary changes that should be made to the circular that would still comport with federal law, but would enable your agency to address what is clearly an emerging crisis.
Congressman, thank you for the question. I started out my career as a wildlands firefighter, and my son is currently a wildlands firefighter for Oregon Department of Forestry. And so housing, of course, is a critical issue for any of our firefighters. And recognizing that we knew that there were going to be rent increases this year, I've asked for those to be extended out over a couple years and have received permission to do so, and we're implementing that. But that being said, we're working very closely in trying to figure out exactly where the increases are happening in the different markets, how can we balance those out, what other authorities both the Secretary and I have to be able to try to mitigate for those increases and develop more public-private partnerships to expand our housing, and so that we can make it more affordable for our firefighters and our frontline NPS staff.
Well, I would say I appreciate that, Director Sams, and I would hope with respect to the decision that you just described with respect to extending the rent increases over a period of years, that you could provide our office with further clarity on that, because I was unaware of that, and that would be something very important for us to be able to communicate back, us meaning collectively the members who sent that letter, to the constituents that we've heard from and the federal wildland firefighters that we've heard from. I would also just say, while I am supportive of NPS and DOI's efforts to increase their housing stock, as reflected in the budget submission that you all have sent over this year, I just in full candor, I'm going to personally apply a much more discerning eye towards supporting any investments in increasing the housing stock, absent some direct communication from OMB, from NPS, from DOI, from the relevant authorities that you all would like to see some deviation, some new statutory authority or change in the underlying organic statutes that would give you the ability to address this problem. Because you can imagine, I mean, if we just simply allocate more dollars for you all to secure more housing, and you all then, by virtue of the 4-year periodic comparable rent analysis that you do with this new housing, come back to us and to the federal wildland firefighters and say that the rent increase is going to be sustained in out years because that's the way the market is functioning, we haven't really addressed that fundamental problem. So I would implore you to let us know what we can do on the statutory side. I happen to think, having reviewed the OMB circular, that the administration can take a variety of different steps that would give you some flexibility, which it sounds like they may have already done, because in the letter that we got from the NPS, and I appreciate very much the chairman's indulgence, it said here, I'll just quote from you, from this letter, the NPS does not set its own rents, nor does it have the authority to disregard rental implementation requirements, to pause, or to reverse rental changes. And this is from, I forget the name of the gentleman that, within your agency, one of the assistant, well, I don't know, I'll get the right title here, but in any event, so that's very different from what you just described. And so my point here is, I do think there's room in the OMB circular, and if it requires us advocating for the same, we're happy to do that. So, again, I thank the chairman for—
Gentleman yields. I'll recognize the gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member. I'd like to start